Hi, everybody. So I'm reading from Globalization by Zygmont Bauman, and this is the fourth chapter, Tourists and Vagabonds. Nowadays, we are all on the move. Many of us change places, moving homes or traveling to and from places which are not our homes. Some of us do not need to go out to travel. We can dash or scurry or flit through the web, netting and mixing on the computer screen messages born in opposite corners of the globe. But most of us are on the move, even if physically, bodily, we stay put. When is our habit? We are glued to our chairs and zap the cable or satellite channels on and off the TV screen, jumping in and out of foreign places with a speed much beyond the capacity of supersonic jets and cosmic rockets, but nowhere staying long enough to be more than visitors, to feel chez soi. So we don't feel at home anywhere. We don't feel at home anywhere, and globalization here is described as constant movement, whether it is moving physically from place to place or moving mentally by watching or communicating with far regions of the world, but there's a constant feeling of movement. In the world we inhabit, where we live, distance does not seem to matter much. Sometimes it seems that it exists solely in order to be cancelled, as if space was but a constant invitation to slight it, to ignore it, refute and deny. Space stopped being an obstacle. One needs just a split second to conquer it. We're so fast that distances and space are no longer important. For many, it is very easy to get to one place or another. Even if you don't actually go there bodily, you feel like you're there because you are watching it through the television or communicating with it through the internet. There are no natural borders anymore, neither are there obvious places to occupy. Wherever we happen to be at the moment, we cannot help knowing that we could be elsewhere. So there is less and less reasons to stay anywhere in particular. There's always more options. And thus we feel often an overwhelming urge to find, to compose such a reason. Pascal's witty adage has turned out to be a prophecy come true. We indeed live in a strange circle where center is everywhere and circumference nowhere, or who knows, perhaps the other way around. And so spiritually, at least we are all travelers. We are all travelers in globalization, or as Michael Benedict puts it, the very significance of geographical location at all scales begins to be questioned. We become nomads, people without a home, are always in touch. But we are on the move also in another deeper sense, whether or not we take to the roads or leap through the channels, and whether we like doing it or detest it. The idea of the state of rest, of immobility, makes sense only in a world that stays still or could be taken for such. In a place with solid walls, fixed rows, and signposts, steady enough to have time to rust. One cannot stay in the same place in moving sands. Neither can one stay put in this late modern or postmodern world of ours, a world where reference points set on wheels and known for their vexing habit of vanishing from view before the instruction they offer has been read out in full, pondered and acted upon. The world moves around us so quickly that there is no way not to be travelers, not to be nomads. The world is moving around us. Even if we try to stay put, we are still travelers. Professor Ricardo Patella of the Catholic University of Leuven recently summed it up very well. Globalization drags economies towards production of the ephemeral, of something unreal, the volatile, the explosive, through a massive and universal reduction of the lifespan of products and services, and of the precarious, temporary, flexible, and part-time jobs. In order to elbow their way through the dense and dark, straggly, deregulated thicket of global competitiveness and into the limelight of public attention, goods, services, and signals must arouse desire. And in order to do so, they must seduce their prospective consumers and outseduce their competitors. Bauman here connects consumerism, wanting to buy more and more things and getting more and more exciting experiences. And it ties this consumerism to globalization. And globalization enables and encourages it. In order to succeed in a globalized world, you have to entice people to be consumerist. But once they have done it, they must make room, and quickly, for other objects of desire, lest the global chase for profit, and even greater profit, rebaptized as economic growth, shall grind to a halt. The reason for producing a sense of constant change and therefore discontent is so corporations can make a profit. Often economists and politicians talk about economic growth. Bauman is suggesting that it is just a cleaned up word for profit, making money. Today's industry is geared increasingly to the production of attractions and temptations, and it is in the nature of attractions that they tempt and seduce only as long as they beckon from that far away which we call the future. While temptation cannot survive for long, the surrender of the tempted, just as desire never survives its satisfaction. So once we get what we want, we no longer desire it. That's why we always want more and are never satisfied. For this chase after new desires rather than after their satisfaction, we're always looking for new things to want, not just getting what we want. The very notion of the limit must need temporal spatial dimensions. The effect of taking the waiting out of wanting is taking the wanting out of waiting. Once all delay can, in principle, be flattened into instantaneity, so that an infinite multitude of time events can be packed into the time span of human life. And once all distance seems fit to be compressed into co-presence, so that no space scale is in principle too big for the explorer of new sensations, what possible meaning could the idea of the limit carry? And without sense, without meaningful meaning, there is no way for the magic wheel of temptation and desire ever to run out of momentum. Because everything is fast, we get what we want quickly, and we get to the stage of getting a new thing quicker. We constantly need more excitement, want new things. The consequence for both the high and the lowly are enormous, as cogently expressed by Jeremy Seabrook. Poverty cannot be cured, for it is not a symptom of the disease of capitalism, quite the reverse. It is evidence of its robust good health. It's spurred to even greater accumulation and effort. Even the very richest in the world complain above all about all the things they must forego, all the things that they give up. Even the most privileged are compelled to bear within themselves the urgency for striving to acquire. So consumerism and globalization create the situation where we will always think we don't have everything we want or need. So we are always on the move, we are always working, we are always striving for more. So moving forward to page 85 and a new section where he talks about inequality. One thing which even the most seasoned and discerning masters of the art of choice do not and cannot choose is the society to be born into. And so we are all in travel, whether we like it or not. We have not been asked about our feelings anyways. So we have many choices in our society, but we don't really have a choice if we want to be part of globalization, of the globalized society. We don't have a choice if we want to stay put. We have to be moving. That's part of the world we live in. Thrown into a vast open sea with no navigation charts, and all the marker buoys sunk and barely visible. We have only two choices left. We may rejoice in the breathtaking vistas, views of the new discoveries, or we may tremble out of fear of drowning. We don't have a choice not to be in the sea. We can either enjoy it or be afraid of drowning. One option, not really realistic, is to claim sanctuary in a safe harbor. One could bet that what seems to be a tranquil haven today will be soon modernized. A theme park, amusement promenade, or crowded marina will replace the sedate boat sheds. The third option, not thus being available, which of the two other options will be chosen or become the lot of the sailor depends in no small measure on the ship's quality and the navigating skills of the sailors. The stronger the ship, the less reason to fear the tides and sea storms. Not all ships are seaworthy, however. So the larger the expanse of free sailing, the more the sailor's fate tends to be polarized and the deeper the chasm between the poles. A pleasurable adventure for the well-equipped yacht may prove a dangerous trap for a tattered dinghy. In the last account, the difference between the two is that between life and death. Bauman is using an extended metaphor of a stormy ocean to emphasize how we relate to globalization. That he emphasizes that how we relate to globalization depends on how good our circumstances are. Are we living in a rich country or a poor country? Do we have a lot of funds and skills or don't we? That is what's going to decide if we enjoy globalization or suffer from it. If we have a yacht or a small ship that's going to sink in the storm. Everybody may be cast into the mode of the consumer. Everybody may wish to be a consumer and indulge in the opportunities which that mode of life holds. But not everybody can be a consumer. To desire to want something is not enough. To make the desire truly desirable, And so to draw the pleasure from the desire, one must have a reasonable hope of getting closer to the desired object. This hope, reasonably entertained by some, is futile for many others. All of us are doomed to the life of choices, but not all of us have the means to be choosers. Like all other known societies, the postmodern consumer society is a stratified one. Stratified means that it has layers. A stratified society means one where different groups have different levels of power and wealth. But it is possible to tell one kind of society from another by the dimensions along which it stratifies its members. Different societies or historical periods are characterized um, by different ways in which they are stratified. What is the most important source that some people have? By the question of what is the most important resource that some people have and some don't have. The most important resources that some people have a lot of and some people have less of. The dimension along which those high up and low down are plotted in a society of consumers is their degree of mobility. How much can they move? Their freedom to choose where to be. So according to Bauman, the things that differentiates between people in our society is how much freedom they have to move. One difference between the high up and those low down is that the first may live and the second behind, but not vice versa. Mobility, who can move to a new place and who cannot move to a new place. Contemporary cities are sites of an apartheid. Those who can afford it abandon the filth and squalor of the regions that those who cannot afford to move are stuck to. In Washington, D.C., they have already done it. In Chicago, Cleveland, and Baltimore, they are close to having done it. In Washington, no discrimination is practiced on the house market. And yet there is an invisible border stretched along 16th Street in the west and Potomac River in the northwest, which those left behind are wise never to cross. Most of the adolescents left behind the invisible yet all too tangible border never saw downtown Washington with all its splendors and ostentatious elegance and refined pleasures in their life. That downtown does not exist. There is no talking over the border. The life experience are so sharply different that it is not clear what the residents of the two sides could talk to each other about were they to meet and stop to converse. As Ludwig Wittgenstein remarked, if lions could talk, we would not understand them. So rich people can decide where to live, while poor people can't decide even where to go. And another difference, those high up are satisfied that they travel through life with their heart's desire and pick and choose their destinations according to the joy they offer. Those low down happen time and again to be thrown out from the site they would rather stay in. So the people with less power, the people with less money are constantly made to live where they live. They are made to, are chased away from where they are, while the people who are more powerful can choose exactly where they want to be. In 1975, there were 2 million forced immigrants, refugees under the care of High Commission set by the UN for the purpose. In 1995, there were 27 million of them, and I think today it would be much higher. If they do not move, it is often the side that is pulled from under their feet. So even if they don't physically move, the space that they inhabit is taken away from them. So it feels like being on the move anyway. If they take to the roads, then their destination, more often than not, is of somebody else's choice. It is seldom enjoyable, and its enjoyability is not what it has been chosen for. They might occupy a highly unprepossessing site which they would gladly leave behind, but they have nowhere else to go. Since nowhere else, they are likely to be welcome and allowed to put up a tent. Progressively, entry visas are phased out of all over the globe, but not passport control. The latter, passports, is still needed, perhaps more than ever before, to sort out the confusion which the abolition of the visas might have created, to set apart those for whose convenience and whose ease of travel the visas have been abolished, from those who should have stayed put, shouldn't travel at all, not meant to travel in the first place. The present-day combination of the annulment of entry visas and the reinforcement of immigration controls has profound symbolic significance. It could be taken as the metaphor for the new emergent stratification. It lays bare the fact that it is now the access to global mobility which has been raised to the topmost rank among the stratifying factors. It also reveals the global dimension of all privilege and deprivation, however local. So it shows us that all inequality, all privilege and deprivation has a global dimension, because wealthy people, powerful people will always have a passport and can go almost wherever they want, while poor people, people under a political oppression, will not have a passport and will not be able to go anywhere outside their country. Some of us enjoy the new freedom of movement, sans papier, without paper. Some others are not allowed to stay put for the same reason. All people may now be wanderers, in fact, or in premonition, but there is an abyss hard to bridge between experience likely to emerge, respectively, at the top and at the bottom of the freedom scale. Okay, we are all travelers, but we are not all travelers the same way. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying that other critics have missed. The fashionable term nomads, applied indiscriminately without thinking to all contemporaries of the postmodern era, is grossly misleading, as it glosses over the profound differences which separate the two types of experience and render all similarity between them formal and superficial. So Bauman is criticizing the celebration of being a nomad, of being a wanderer, because these celebrations ignore how some people have the power to choose to travel or to stay put, more or less, while others have change, movement, even homelessness forced upon them. Some of us have choices, some of us do not have choices, and that's what separates people in the global society. And just saying that all of us are nomads now, all of us are wanderers now, whether rich or poor, ignores these differences. And the concept of globalization itself can sometimes cause us to ignore these important differences. As a matter of fact, the world's sedimented on the two poles. At the top and at the bottom of the emergent hierarchy of mobility differ sharply. They also become increasingly incommunicado to each other. They can't communicate. For the first world, the world of the globally mobile, the space has lost its constraining quality and is easily traveled through in both its real and virtual renditions. For the second world, the world of the locally tied, of those barred from movement and thus bound to bear passively whatever change may be visited on the locality they are tied to, the real space is fast closing up. This is a kind of deprivation which is made yet more painful by the obtrusive media display of the space conquest and of the virtual accessibility of distances that stay stubbornly unreachable in non-virtual reality. The shrinking of space abolishes the flow of time. The inhabitants of the first world live in a perpetual present, going through a succession of episodes hygienically insulated from their past as well as their future. These people are constantly busy and perpetually short of time, since each moment of time is non-extensive, an experience identical with that of time full to the brim. People marooned, stuck in the opposite world, are crushed under the burden of abandonment, of the burden of abundant, redundant, and useless time they have nothing to fill with. In their time, nothing ever happens. They do not control time, but neither are they controlled by it. Unlike their clocking out ancestors, subject to the faceless rhythm of factory time, they can only kill time as they are slowly killed by it. Residents of the first world live in time. Space does not matter for them, since spanning every distance is instantaneous. It is the experience which Jean Baudrillard encapsulates in his image of hyperreality, where the virtual and the real are no longer separable, since both share or miss in the same measure of the objectivity, externality, and punishing power, which Emile Durkheim listed as the symptoms of all reality. Residents of the second world, on the contrary, live in space, heavy, resilient, untouchable, which ties down time and keeps it beyond the resident's control. Their time is void. In their time, nothing ever happens. Only the virtual television time has a structure, a timetable. The rest of time is monotonous, ticking away. It comes and goes, making no demands and apparently leaving no trace. Its sediments appear all of a sudden, unannounced and uninvited, immaterial and lightweight, ephemeral, with nothing to fill it with the sense, and so give it gravity. Time has no power over that all too real space to which the residents of the second world are confined, are stuck in that space. For the inhabitants of the first world, the increasingly cosmopolitan, extraterritorial world of global businessmen, global culture managers, and global academics, state borders are leveled down as they are dismantled for the world's commodities, capital, and finance. So for the people with power and for the things that they want to move around, borders seem not to matter anymore. But that's not the case for other people. For the inhabitants of the second world, the walls built of immigration controls, of residence laws, and of clean streets and zero tolerance policies grow taller. The moat separating them from the sites of their desire and of dreamed of redemption grow deeper, while all bridges The first attempt to cross them proved to be drawbridges, bridges that can be taken away, raised up. The first travel at will, get much fun from their travel, particularly if traveling first class or using private aircraft, are cajoled or bribed to travel and welcomed with smiles and open arms when they do. The second, travel surreptitiously in secret, often illegally, sometimes paying more for the crowded steerage of a sinking, unseaworthy boat than others pay for business class gilded luxuries, and are frowned upon and if unlucky, arrested and promptly deported when they arrive. So there's a group of people who are invited everywhere, and there's a group of people who are thrown away from everywhere and are stuck where they are or are made to move to places they don't want to be. For some people, distance and border are irrelevant. For others, they are all powerful. This is especially frustrating because they see the others move freely. They have a lot of cultural representations of the others who are moving freely, while they are totally stuck or made to move against their will to places they don't want to go. Let me stress that while the focus here in these passages is on literal travel, it also reflects on everything that freedom to move and change as you like gets you. Bauman digs further into these issues of freedom to change and move in other parts of the book and in further sections that you might want to read. But this criticism about how globalism affects different groups of people very, very differently is what I wanted to highlight here.